We're getting ready for the start of the Historic Touring Car Challenge, and they're all beginning to line up. We've got lots of RS500, Sierra Cosworths building up a bit of pace as we come through the last corner. We've got the Nissan Skyline in there of Simon Garrard as well. It's David Tomlin on pole position, who's going to try and take the start from Paul Mensley, but we've got a three abreast. We've got Mark Wright in there as well, and as they turn into the first corner at Abbey, it's Paul Mensley who's taken the initial advantage in the number 22 car. Just look at how misty it is in the conditions that we've got. Really slippery out there, but Paul Mensley has made a brilliant getaway, getting ahead of David Tomlin, who was the pole sitter in his Sierra Cosworth, and the Nissan Skyline of Simon Garrard is trying to get into second place. We're a bit wide around the outside, couldn't quite make it, and actually the poleman I think has dropped back a little bit, so we'll have a look at that. The Nissan up into second place. It's working well in these conditions.
It certainly is, yes. The Sierra Cosworth of Paul Mensley leads, but the Nissan Skyline in second place, and that's powered its way through ahead of a gaggle of Sierra Cosworths. You see Julian Thomas there in the caliper car, which was raced in period by Andy Rouse, and the pole position car, which is David Tomlin, as you say, has dropped back. It's the car with the green and red flashes on it, and as they come out of Luffield, there is Julian Thomas in the Caliber sponsored car. A lot of these cars running in period livery, of course, which is wonderful to see as they head off down towards Cops Corner, and it's still Mensley leading in a car he had built for a race earlier this season, so it's a very new car, but very effective.
So we've got a race that started out as a 50-minute encounter. We have pit stops as well. Julian Thomas is making a bit of an attack there, isn't he? Didn't quite manage to get past poleman David oh, he has. Well, he's gone too wide. I just looked off the screen for a fraction of a second, and he disappeared off as I was looking at some of the paperwork. But he's got back on again.
Yes, just went across the runoff area at Beckett's and came back on. He won't get a penalty for that because he didn't gain an advantage, but not something you want to be doing too frequently as they come down through the murk into Stowe Corner. And that's Julian Thomas we're looking at there, into Stowe, and just ahead of another of the Sierra Cosworths, just struggling to see where the first non-Sierra Cosworth, apart from that Nissan Skyline, is.
We've got a
just
Capri up there.
Yeah, Capri
just
just behind them, isn't he? One of the GA Capris.
Yeah, so Steve Dance in 6th place. He's the next non-Sierra. But as you say, we've still got that Nissan Skyline going well at the moment as Simon Garrard. He's running in 2nd position. So Cosworth Sierra leads the race right now in the hands of Paul Mensley. He is sharing that car with Matthew Ellis, but Julian Thomas doing a good job here as well. He'll be sharing that car with Callum Lockie, and Julian is currently in 4th place. And then the murkiness, I'm sorry that it's so difficult to see, but the rain, this sort of misty rain that has come down, really causing a few problems in terms of visibility for everybody, both whether you're in the car or watching from the sidelines. So that is a bit of a challenge for everybody, I have to say. And that's the battle for the lead, which is getting closer, Alistair.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, Simon Garrard is getting closer to the leader, and we've got a battle down further down. It's Julian Thomas looking to take 3rd place from David Tomlin, but doesn't manage to get that done in Brooklands, but he's still alongside as they go into Luffield, and we know that the outside line at Luffield is quick, but these cars are a lot more tricky to handle with all the power that they've got. Just 2-wheel drive, of course, and quite skinny tyres as well. Very much more difficult to handle on the wet track than the Formula Juniors we saw a few minutes ago.
Yes, indeed. Remember the days of Andy Rouse racing these cars, of Carl Jones in a oil-based sponsored car as well, and it was always great fun to see. He would have loved being out in these conditions, actually. Carl Jones was entered this weekend in another category, but sadly we didn't see him out in the end. But he would have loved this in the Sierras. But right now, up front, it is Paul Mensley who's just holding control. Julian Thomas has got into that 3rd place, getting past David Tomlin, who had the pole position. So Julian Thomas making good progress. Early stages of the race still, and a long way to go. The Nissan Skyline still within a couple of seconds. It has dropped back a little bit from where we saw about half a lap ago, though, on the leader. In the background, you can just see the Capri of Steve Dance. Just got a glimpse of it just now, in 6th position. good to see him there. And then being chased at the moment by the number 85, another RS500 of the Browns. Sean Brown is currently in that car, but the Capri of Steve Dance is getting into the mix as we continue to watch Julian Thomas now up into third place, and the leaders have come across the line once again. And for now, Paul Mensley's doing a fine job staying ahead of Simon Garrard. Simon in this car, the Nissan Skyline, a car that really dominated a certain period of touring car racing. He isn't sharing this car with anybody. He's going to be doing the entire race himself. He will, of course, have to make a pit stop to an allocated pit stop time, but then he will be back out in his car, whereas those around him, certainly the leader and the two behind him, they will be swapping drivers. Mind you, Callum Lockie and Dave Coyne will be taking over those cars. They are very rapid in these rather tricky conditions, so that could produce a few changes. David Tomlin, the pole sitter, down in 5th place. Steve Dance is in 6th place. And interestingly, the car that Steve Soper will be taking over a little bit later on, that's currently in 8th place. Being driven at this stage by Craig Davies, who is also pretty rapid, but Steve Soper will be taking that car on after the pit stop. So plenty to watch out for as this race continues.
And we see there Paul Mensley and Simon Garrard just getting a flick of oversteer as they come out of Luffield and now through Woodcote Corner onto the old pit straight. You can see the heritage pits, as they're called, on the right hand side there, up towards Copse Corner. And then we see the battle for 3rd and 4th places, and it looks as though the Thomas car is now coming under pressure from Mark Wright, who will hand over to Dave Coyne, the driver who dominated in Formula Ford in the 80s, but back racing in historic cars, as we see a Rover SD1 going through Beckett's. Here we've got that battle again. Mark Wright has got past Julian Thomas, and we can see in the background David Tomlin, who was passed earlier on by Julian Thomas, just starting to slide back a little bit into the clutches of, I think, Steve Dance in the background. Steve Dance in the Capri, that's from a completely different era of touring car racing, and a very much more modified car than the Sierra Cosworths, which were run to the touring car regulations of the time. But it's interesting, Ben, to see that how closely matched they are, despite being 15 years apart.
Yes, it is. It's fun to see, and to see all of, we mentioned yesterday, to see so many different types of car out there, with some great classic touring cars all racing together, because you didn't really see Sierras versus Capris back in the day, because they were of, as you say, different eras, but it's lovely to see it. There is that rather gorgeous car of Steve Dance, that Ford Capri, as you say, quite a modified machine in its day, battling away well in the damp conditions that we've got currently. So that's all looking good, and Steve is effectively leading his particular class in the categories. There are a couple of different categories in this race. We have the Historic Touring Car Challenge. The front runners are all in that class. We have the Tony Dron Trophy as well. Leading that quite a long way down the field is the number 70 car at the moment. Marcus Jewell will be sharing it with Ben Klukas. That's quite a long way down the field for now. And there is also another class of cars, some of the more classic touring cars as well. So we'll have a little look at that later to see who's doing well. But right now we're focused on that beautiful Ford Capri. Coming past one of the Alfa Romeos. There are a couple of Alfas out there in this one, but that Capri with its big bodywork, the rear bodywork widened up so that they could have big wide tyres on the back of the machine, and it works beautifully well, doesn't it, as he battles with the Sierras. Big slide there from David Tomlin, who just about gathered it back together as he continues his battle with Julian Thomas. Not much to choose between those two, but Mark Wright doing a good job to have got ahead of them and holding on to 3rd place for now. So the gap up front, 2.5 seconds from the race leader, Paul Mensley. He'll be handing over to Matthew Ellis when we get into the pit stops. And the Nissan Skyline still in 2nd place. So there is our race leader. And this RS500 being driven very, very smoothly, very well at this point. Rob Gravett, of course, was a British touring car champion in a Sierra Cosworth RS500 some years ago. And it was a key time for all of them to be racing. That was back in 1990. By then there were just 2 classes instead of 4 classes, as they started the beginning of the super touring period in touring cars. Up to then we'd had 4 different classes in what was called the British Saloon Car Championship, and it was about winning your class by the biggest margin, and often then you could be the overall champion.
Well, there's quite a strong link between this car we're looking at and Rob Gravitt, actually, because Rob Gravitt used to be run by a team, and the engineers from that team actually build Paul Mensley's engine. And he's very pleased to have them building the engine, because it's a very reliable car. Normally, there's always problems.
Don't say that too soon.
No, I don't want to. I did that twice yesterday, didn't I? And we had a spin from a driver I was talking about. But yeah, that's that engine built by a team that was in period building Sierra Cosworths for the British Touring Car Championship. As we're looking through the murk at what a lovely shot that was of the flash of flame out of the side exhausts on the Nissan. Yeah, that just shows you how big the Nissan is compared to the Mini running in the under 2 litre touring car class. And the Nissan now firing down the Wellington Straight. Such power from that car. It was actually so dominant in saloon car racing that the Australians named it Godzilla, because they said it's a beast and it's from Japan. So they call it, and it's known as Godzilla generally now. It's a totally dominant car built by Nissan, and so much so that the touring car regulations were changed to regulate it out of touring cars.
Right, okay, well let's see how this all continues. We've got a weaving going on there from our leader as he tries to cut his way through the traffic. He's just going past the Volvo. We've only got the one Volvo entered in. It's Phil Perryman, but it's lovely to see a Volvo. We've all seen them in touring cars. We saw Volvo Estates as well back in the day. This car was a slightly earlier version, turbocharged Volvo 242. We just had a glimpse of it then. More Capris, more standard Capris to overtake as well.
I think they're actually lapping the Tony Dron lead there, Ben, because the lead for Tony Dron has changed. It's now John and Jack Young in their Camaro that's taken the lead, and I think that's about the point at which Paul Mensley is lapping now. So we've got a couple of races within one, and they're both together on track at the moment.
Yeah, good to see. So this is a bit of a dominant effort so far from Paul Mensley. If he can just maintain this, they're in great shape when they come to the pit stop. But don't forget, we've got some very quick drivers who will be taking over some of the cars behind, like Dave Coyne and Callum Lockie as well. Steve Soper due to join in the car that is currently in 8th place, another of the Sierra Cosworth RS500s. Of course, Steve back in the day was raced all sorts of different machinery, from the baby Metros up to BMWs. He was a key part of BMW's success. Let's never forget the 1992 title winner Tim Harvey, a friend of mine. We've commentated together many times, and Tim won that championship in 1992. Helped a little bit by the fact that Steve had a little incident with John Cleland in the season finale here at Silverstone.
I suspect that's one of the most watched bits of touring car film online now these days. Simon Garrett makes his way around once again at the loop, going around the outside of that Capri, which is running in the other section of this race. Cars that are not competitive with these front-running cars, a lot less power, a lot less development of them. The regulations at the time were very different. But there's Paul Mensley, who's leading in his Sierra Cosworth RS500, the number 500 relating to the approximate power of the engine. So 500 brake horsepower, and I think they were getting a little more than that in the touring car racing at the time, through two relatively skinny tyres at the back of the car. The Nissan comes through in 2nd place through Woodcote Corner along onto the Heritage Pit Straight, and look at what he cannot see, just a wall of spray in front of him.
Nice to see. He's coming up to lap the VW Scirocco. There's only the one of the VW Sciroccos in this race, but it's fun to see a real mixture of machinery. It's the Jim Morris, Tom Shepherd car, so they're running in a different category. But again, it's nice to see them. And a Rover SD1 too. I always love to see the Rovers out there.
The black and white car just being passed by Mensley, I think that's the leader. That's the John Young driven black and white Camaro leading Tony Dron Trophy. So that's our 2nd race within a race. And that car took the lead about a lap ago from the Ben Klukas Marcus Jewell car. So there's a good battle going on in that section of the race as well, as Garrett makes his way down to Stowe. Yeah,
I noticed that also in that category we've got the John Spears Tiffany Dell car, and that is actually 2nd in the category now, not far behind, and it's Tiff who will be taking over that car, so they may still have a chance. So they're not far behind this car. As you say, this is leading that second category, and then behind you can actually see that, no, not quite, it's look out for a Ford Capri, just a little further back. Yes, you just see the Capri in the background. That is second in the class. It's being driven by John Spears at the moment, but Tiffany Dell will be taking over at the pit stop. So we could be on for another nice battle in a separate class here that we are enjoying for the Historic Touring Car Challenge. But as you say, right now, this is the leader in that particular challenge, the Chevy Camaro Z28 from 1973 with a 5.7 litre V8 engine. But it's putting the power down pretty well, despite these very, very slippery, wet conditions. We've still got this rather drizzly rain. It is still raining around everywhere here at Silverstone, and you can see on the cameras just how damp it is. It's not ideal, and I'm sorry the pictures are a little bit grey and murky, but that is the same for everybody out there on the circuit right now. It's not ideal. Here we are, beginning of August. It's not a typical day that you might expect, but I suppose it is typical British summer. So there's that gap. It's not big, is it, between the Chevy and the Capri?
No, John Spears driving very well indeed. The Camaro coming down into Brooklands. The Capri about to be, being nibbled at by the Scirocco. That's Jim Morris. That's John Morris's son. John Morris, a period driver in touring cars. The Capri finished in the colours of the Holman Blackburn, and Mike Crabtree raced in a car in those colours. But look at the cars coming through Luffield, and we've got group. Steve Dance coming through as well in the much more modified Capri, and there's David Tomlin just getting past the Tony Drom Trophy leader as they come up through the Merc towards Copse Corner, and such differing potential from these cars in the conditions. And
the Scirocco's got past the Capri and all of that, and actually they are battling for position. So the Scirocco's now in second place in class.
Yes, that's a really good battle for the lead of the Tony Dron Trophy, isn't it? And then we've got Steve Dance there, who's in the overall leading positions.
There's our overall leader. He's the one we can spot, even though it's a black car. It's beautifully liveried up, and we can just about find it through the Merc. But he's doing well, leading this race comfortably now by 4.8 seconds over the Skyline, still running strongly, of Simon Garrard. So they're dealing with the conditions. Into the pits has come the number 75 Ford Capri. That is Jonathan White. He's in the Tony Drom Trophy category, so fairly standard Ford Capri, and back on his way. Now, the pit lane hasn't actually been opened in terms of an official pit stop yet, so it is obviously a problem they've got there. And now it looks like the harness isn't fully fitted for some reason, so they're having to refit the driver's harness before sending him on his way. The pit window will be opening relatively soon, but until it does, you can't come in to make that pit stop. We saw a number of times yesterday, Alistair, if there's a safety car, then it's a very good time to make sure you do your pit stop under safety car. You can gain a lot of time.
You can indeed, and you can also lose a lot of time. And what we saw twice yesterday was the pit window opening when some of the cars had passed the pit entry and some hadn't. And that actually made the difference for the win of the race, because if you could dive into the pits under a safety car, you could gain so much time. As we're looking now at one of those wonderful Rover SD1s, it's great to see those out. Steve Soper raced. There isn't actually a car on the track, probably, that Steve Soper hasn't raced at some point. He was obviously very competitive in anything, but he raced in the Works Rover team, he raced in BMWs, and he raced in all sorts of different cars in UK and Europe. The Sierra Cosworth, of course, as well, dominant in Europe with the Eggenberger team.
Tell you, we haven't seen much of yet, but they are running out there somewhere in the field, but they haven't sort of got into the battle quite so well as some of the BMW M3s, which were also a critical part of that period. Frank Sittner won the 1988 championship in a BMW M3, didn't he?
Yes, that's right. Well, they're kind of not quite competitive with these Cosworths, are they? Because they came after when the rules were changed and cars were a little bit slower. But we saw some wonderful battles, and the M3 and the Sierra Cosworth were also successful in rallying as well. They were taken over into the rallying discipline, also winning championships and lots of rallies as well. So they were really very good cars for competition in whatever form. As we're watching Julian Thomas in his ex-Andy Rouse car. That was Andy Rouse's car in period, so it's the actual car that Julian Thomas has now bought and re-prepared, and he'll be handing over to Callum Lockie.
He's definitely lost a bit of ground, hasn't he? Because he was running quite strongly early on in this race, but then it all went a little bit against him. But they're all very close in this particular group. You've got Tomlin now, he's done slightly better. He's moved back up. He's got back up into 4th place. Then Steve Dance in the Capri. And then you've got Sean Brown next up. And then being chased by Julian Thomas. So, yeah, all pretty close, these guys. And we'll see how it goes when the pit window opens up and they change over, or just take a pause, depending on whether they're swapping in the race today. This group pulling away a little bit from the next group, but the car that Steve Soper will be taking over is next on the list in 8th position. Some of the minis being overtaken there. Obviously they're in a very different category, but have always been a very important part of British saloon car racing. Through the murk they go, and just trying to get past some of the slower cars and keep it clean when the conditions are so tricky and the visibility is so low. Not at all easy. I have to say I'm pretty happy we haven't seen too many incidents yet in this race, and fingers crossed we continue this way. And Steve Dance got a bit of a run now on David Tomlin as they come through the left-hander at Aintree. Very tight between the two of them, and I think Steve Dance may well take the place. That's going to pop him into 4th place. Yes, he does. So well done to Steve in the Capri. That's got him ahead of another of the Sierra Cosworths. And then in the meantime, Julian Thomas has just gained a place as well. He's back up into 6th.
There's battles going on all the way down, aren't there? And that Tony Dron battle is a little bit further around the track from here, is still absolutely joined as well. So it's really good to see so many cars on track, but also so many real battles for position going on, as Julian Thomas now coming up behind David Tomlin through Woodcote Corner. He's got a good run through there. He can't see anything, surely. His wipers must be on maximum speed. Well, it doesn't look that maximum, does it? But he's made his way through, and he passes on the inside of Copse Corner, but David Tomlin coming back at him. Good move there from Tomlin. He just let Thomas slide through on the inside, took the place back, and they're catching Steve Dance as well, and a change for 2nd with the fastest lap as well for Mark Wright.
And the pit window's open, and it's coming straight into the pits is Simon Garrard. There he is in the Nissan Skyline, and we know he's right up there. He was in 2nd place throughout that first stint. Now he's not swapping to anyone else, he's sticking with the car, but he has to sit in the pits for an allocated time. They'll be watching the clock and then sending him his way once again, trying to clean that windscreen. And as you said, Alistair, the windscreens, it's not just the outside of the wipers, it's the inside. You can see how steamed up they are, and you can particularly see that on Julian's car. Very steamed up on the inside, misted up on the inside, and that is one of the most difficult aspects, I think, of touring car driving in these kinds of conditions. And unless you've got some a heated screen or some very special material, it's very difficult to avoid that misting up.
It is indeed, yes, and your vision very much is limited, and quite a lot of your pickup points for braking and so on, you might be looking out at the side window of the car, or certainly at an angle through the side window, and that's probably not happening at the moment because they can't see out of these cars. And still a great battle. We've got passing our commentary position actually, with David Tomlin just ahead of Julian Thomas, who we saw get through at Copse Corner, but Tomlin nipped back in front, and they're only just behind Steve Dance. As we see,
our leader has had a spin. Yeah, so a spin for the number 22 car. He has been having an enjoyable run up front, but look, he's got it going again, but has lost some crucial time. So we are definitely going to see some changes here. Right now, it is the Mark Wright, Dave Coyne car that has taken the lead. We haven't seen them come into the pits yet, but that was not at all what he was planning, is it?
Well, we saw the white Sierra of Mark Wright nip through on the inside as Paul Mensley's spin was finishing. So he's decided to go straight into the pits for his mandatory stop, and Simon Garrard is back out on track again after his stop.
So he's going to have a good chance of leading this race, Garrard, because he's made that early pit stop, and in the meantime the man who was in front of him has had a spin. So very good chance for the Nissan Skyline to be leading this race after everybody has made a pit stop. But remember, we've got some rapid drivers about to come out. Dave Coyne going to be taking over. We'll see Julian Thomas come in and hand over to Callum Lockie soon, and we're also going to see Mark Davis handing over to Steve Soper. So we could well see some more changes here going on. Mark Wright in the lead now, and also with a good lap. So you have to say he's been driving extremely well. And we could see an interesting fight going on in the second stage of this race. Still just under 26 minutes to go in this historic touring car challenge. A race filled with such a vast variety of cars. Further down the order, it's still the Youngs who are leading in the Tony Dron category. John and Jack Young in their Chevy Camaro. Into the pits has come, as we see, the original leader who had that spin just before that. Getting a bit of support from his mechanics.
Well, that was Paul Mensley there, walking backwards and forwards to the car. He's taken his helmet off quite quickly.
Yes.
He's now saying to his co-driver, I had a big spin. And I went round twice.
Matthew Ellis, isn't it, in the car now?
Matthew Ellis just rejoining. Very low speed pit speed limit, so you won't see the cars rushing out of the pits. Front of shot now is the beautiful orange BMW CSL of Frederick Wakeman and Patrick Blakely-Edwards, and there's the Jaguar XJS. We don't see those out these days in historic racing very often, as we're looking now at the leading car at the moment, and the car that set the fastest lap, with Mark Wright, the builder of the car, at the wheel at the moment. We'll be handing over to 80s touring car champion Dave Coyne.
Well, let's see how he gets on here, as he's putting together some pretty quick laps.
I said touring car champion.
Yes, I was
meant
thinking
Formula Ford champion.
Yeah, Formula Ford champion.
I was thinking Formula Ford and said touring car.
Yeah, no, quite understand. I'm thinking, which touring cars did he win? No, Formula Ford, very much a Formula Ford champion, Dave Coyne. He was like effectively, he was like a professional Formula Ford driver almost of the period, switching between some different teams, and always mighty and fantastic to watch, and a great racing style. But Dave, in recent years, taken up some historic racing with these sorts of machines, and with the Mustang that we saw yesterday, he was very, very competitive with that. So we are up for a few changes, or certainly some battles, once this all gets going, once all the pit stops have been made. Mark Wright hasn't come in yet in this car number 60, but he will be due in fairly soon, I would think. Coyne will then take over. Meanwhile, into the pits now, Steve Dance and Julian Thomas. Steve will continue in his Ford Capri, but Julian Thomas is now handing over to Callum Lockie, and Mark Davis is now handing over to Steve Soper. That car is also in the pit, so we're going to see a change around there. Further down the order in the other category, those guys have already been making their pit stops as well, and we'll try and keep an eye on any changes in the Tony Dron Trophy race. So, is he going to stay out there a little longer? Yes, he is. They're leaving it quite late before making their pit stop, aren't they?
Yes, well, Mark Wright and Dave Coyne are fairly well matched, I think, in terms of their lap times. So, and Mark Wright's the owner of the car, so he will make the choice as to how long he wants to drive for within the allowed time, and he may well decide to just drive as long as he's allowed.
And there's no doubt that when you've got conditions like this and you get into a good rhythm, sometimes it's sensible just to stay out there that bit longer, because when you're in the rhythm, you know where the grip is, you know where to avoid because you've found a slippery bit. It's often worth leaving that driver out there doing a good job. But we will be keeping an eye on this Nissan Skyline, because it's going to have a very, very good chance of being right up there once everybody has made a pit stop, I believe. We'll have to wait and see how it all pans out in a little while. There's the car that was leading originally.
Yes, the Paul Mensley car that had that
not
spin.
far behind the Skyline now, is it? This is a battle, just 2 seconds between them.
As they go into Beckett's, we're just looking if... Yeah, there's the Skyline there coming out of the murk. Didn't actually see it until it appeared through there. So despite that spin for Paul Mensley, now it's Matthew Ellis at the wheel of the Black Sierra. It's actually managed to stay on terms with the Nissan.
Yeah, so this could effectively be the battle for the lead, because of those that have made their early pit stops, these two are still very close. So we'll wait and see, because Mark Wright has been flying along in his Sierra, but he's still got his pit stop to do. He is the outright leader now, but as you can see from that pit lane table, the pit table there on the left, he has not yet made his pit stop, whereas most of the others have done so and have exited the pits. The Capri of Steve Dance is in there as well, isn't it? So actually it is a three-way battle there between these three here. They're all contenders for the victory.
Absolutely they are, yes, and we may see some of the cars that haven't yet done their pit stops pop out of the pit lane into this battle, so we'll add cars to it as Mensley goes up the inside of Steve Dance into Copse Corner. So that's a change of position. It's not for the lead at the moment, but we think it may well be when the pit stops all unwind, and that will put Garrett just ahead of Mensley and Dance down into third as they pass one of the Camaros coming out of Village into the loop. The Camaro staying tight to the inside.
Only just, but managing to stay out of the way of this really important battle that's going on. That was the Graham and Ollie Bryant Chevy Camaro, actually the family car. Nice to see them both racing, father and son. But for now, this number 37 Skyline, Simon Garrard, is in good position. The battle between the Sierra and the Capri is crucial, could be for a podium finish as well. But we're going to see how this fits in with some of the other cars that have stopped. I see that the Julian Thomas Callum Lockie car seems to have dropped back down the order after the pit stop, so whether they had a little bit of an issue, I don't know, but that is definitely further down the order. And we're still waiting for Mark Wright to come into the pits. He is our outright race leader, and we still haven't seen him come in. We haven't seen several cars come in. That little group you've got at the top there have not come in. So down to 5th place is the first car that has made a pit stop, Garrard. So that is why we are looking at him as the potential winner. Top 4 there have not yet made a pit stop.
And Mark Wright, his lap times are consistently faster than anybody else. So he's done the fastest lap of the race, we know that, but he's also continuing to do fast laps, so he's pulling away. So I guess in his mind he's thinking, well, why do I need to come in? I'll hand over to Dave towards the end of the window, which can't be far away actually. I think it's at 15 minutes, so probably this lap or maybe the next one, as we see one of the Sierras pulling off, and that's great thinking from the driver. He's got the car behind the barriers, so that won't cause any issue with yellow flags.
That's the Sean and Daniel Brown car. Into the pits has come the number 155 Nissan Skyline. Jonathan Bailey and Andy Middlehurst sharing this car. And this looks like a straightforward pit stop between the two. It was Andy, I think, who started the race, so I think Jonathan Bailey is now taking over, as we're still waiting for the race leader to come in. There he is, car number 60, doing a fantastic job, lapping faster than anybody else, and could well still be in front after the pit stops once he's handed it over to Dave Coyne. He's down at the bottom end of the track at the moment, but their pit stops are up at the national pits. So I think we will, as you said, see him come in at the end of this lap, most likely. He's got a big advantage over the other cars behind, but they are starting to make their pit stops now. Richard Kent and Chris Ward's Broadspeed Capri has just entered the pits from what is 2nd place currently. We've also got, we're waiting to see Dave Cuff come in his BMW M3. He's currently shown as 3rd on the order there, but he has now still got a pit stop to make. And Mark's really hustling along, trying to get past another of the Rovers as he comes through the order. That's the Chris and Charles Williams shared Rover SD1 from 1985. But the Sierra Cogsworth with plenty more horsepower than the Rover, despite those 3.5 litre engines in the Rovers. The turbocharged Sierra's a much faster vehicle. Now he's coming down towards Brooklands and Luffield, and then I guess we'll see him enter the pit lane.
I think he's got to, because I don't think he can do another lap within the pit window, and even if he could, it would be really dangerous to do so, because if there was a safety car and it slowed everybody down, he wouldn't be able to make it back to the pit. So are we going to see him pull to the right here into the pit lane as he comes out of Luffield? Will he jink over to the right? Yes, he does. So our leader coming into the pits.
Yeah, so this is going to be fun to see. Is he going to come back out, or is the car going to come back out? Because it'll be Dave Coyne who takes over. Will the car come back out in front? It's looking quite promising, I have to say, with the laps times that car was doing. It does indicate that they will maintain an advantage. But everybody else now moving up that order thanks to all of the pit stops being made. Everybody has had to come in. You see the Volvo has made its pit stop as well. Actually, Phil Perryman staying in the car. And Callum Lockie will now be taking over the number 10 car here that you're looking at. He's trying to demist the screen a little bit, but Callum's not too worried. He says, no, come on, we just need to get on with this. Oh, no, there is something he's not happy about. Come on, I need a bit of help with something. So it is the cleaning the screen is proving to be pretty crucial. And yeah, so I rather wonder, it's a 2nd pit stop for these guys, so they've obviously had a problem. I don't know quite what's gone on for them.
I'd say it was that misted screen.
Maybe.
I think Callum's come in and
look at this. This is an important battle. It's the Sierra versus the Nissan once again, and the Sierra that led the race in the early stages, now being driven by Matthew Ellis, is still side by side with Simon Garrard in the Nissan Skyline. Now I think they're going to end up behind the Dave Coyne Sierra when it comes out of the pits, but this is a really tight battle.
It is, and it looked every bit as though Simon Garrett was going to understeer off into the Sierra there at Village, but he didn't. He held on to it, but he goes through the inside at Aintree. What a move from Simon Garrett. He let the Sierra get ahead at the loop, but he's passed it back again. You can tell which is the Nissan because of the flames coming out of the side of the exhaust as he changes gear. Down into Brooklands, they're just passing the original Tom Walkinshaw Racing XJS there on the inside, and that's held up Paul Mensley a little.
And I gather that the Dave Coyne car is just exiting the pit, so he will be coming out in front. Look how tight this is.
And that's the Tony Dron leader as well, isn't it? They were passing.
But look, the number 60 car, look how far in front it is. It was already out of the pits, as I mentioned it, and they've got a massive lead now, really, over that battle that's going on from second position. So well done to Mark Wright. He really did string those laps together effectively, didn't he?
So position on the circuit-wise, we saw him going through Beckett's as the leaders were coming up to Copse Corner. So it's a fair distance between them, isn't there? So we'll have to see now whether the change of driver in any of these cars makes any difference to the outright paces. We've still got this battle going on. The Nissan side by side with the Ellis Sierra Cosworth. The Cosworth goes through on the inside at Beckett's and up towards Chapel now onto the Hanger Straight. This is where the Nissan has got more power, so will he go back past? You can hardly see either of them just coming up behind one of the earlier Capris, and Garrett seems to have lost time there. He suddenly dropped back. We'll have to wait and see till we get this shot through Stowe Corner. But he looked, I think he's got a problem.
Oh, that is a shame if he's got a problem, because he's been driving so well in this race and he's been battling away for lead and certainly for a podium. But it looks okay there. Let's just keep an eye on it. What is going on for Simon that he suddenly slowed down? He's now under pressure from Steve Dance again in the Capri, and this is position. So Simon is in third, but Steve Dance could be in a position to overtake. It seems to accelerate okay out of club, but I'm just not quite sure what's going on.
Just coming through Abbey now, and Garrett is still ahead of Dance. They've just passed, I think that will be Tiffany Dell now in the Capri that he's taken over from John Spears.
There goes the Capri. He's gone past him. There's clearly a problem on the Nissan that is not quite right. Trying to see if we can spot anything on the car there through the murky surroundings. That right front wheel at quite a strong angle. They do run a lot of camber on these cars. They always have done, so I don't think that that's an issue.
I think the most likely thing is turbo failure. That's what often takes these Nissans out. But
I don't know, actually, the right front isn't looking quite right, is it? The amount of camber on that right front is not right. That is, I don't know. They do run a lot. They do run a lot, don't they?
They do, very, very much so.
I think you're right. It's more likely to be a mechanical engine issue that is slowing him down. We're not seeing the flames come out the exhaust that we did earlier.
And I think we might see him pull to the right and go into the pit lane unless he knows that the car isn't going to get further damaged. You know, he hasn't come in the pit lane, so maybe he knows the problem and he's going to carry on, but at reduced pace.
Oh, well, what a shame. I'm disappointed about that because he's been putting in such a great effort. Meanwhile, can I tell you what the lead gap is? It is nearly 30 seconds. 30 seconds between this car, the number 60 Sierra, and although there's another Sierra with him, that's a lapped car now because that's Callum Lockie who's made 2 pit stops. So sadly that car has dropped down to 14th position, a lap down on the race leader. And also there has been a little bit of a change around in the other group, what we call the Tony Dron Trophy. Ben Klukas has now taken the lead in that category in the Ford Capri that he's sharing with Marcus Jewell. Ben Klukas has been having a good weekend. We've seen him on the podium several times this weekend, haven't we?
We're looking now at Matthew Ellis in the car in second place, as you say, some 30 seconds or so behind. Although the last lap time for Ellis was some 3.3 seconds quicker than the leading car. Now that could well be because Dave Coyne got caught up in traffic, and in these conditions it's impossible to safely overtake in places where in the dry you would just slip through in a car as powerful as the Cosworth. But 3.3 seconds quicker for Ellis that last time around.
Oh, and problems for the Sierra that started on pole position and was part of the battle for a long time.
That doesn't Does that look to be
Yeah.
good? Yeah, it's going slowly. Matthew Ellis has slowed.
Oh dear. So what's going on with all these Sierras? Why are they all suddenly struggling? I wonder what the problem is. I know it's a long race, but I'm sure they've got plenty of fuel on board. And it's wet, so they won't have been using nearly as much fuel as they would do in the dry. So it's not that. So it's some sort of reliability issues are definitely going on here. This car from second place is dropping out of the race. Oh dear, oh dear. A potential podium. And it was beautifully driven in the early stages by Paul Mensley. Matthew Ellis did a great job once he took over. But the other Sierra, the man that was on pole originally, David Tomlin, sitting there in the pits as well. Don't know what the trouble is for them, but it's all got a bit disappointing. This is going to change things around. I wonder whether Simon Garrard is still going to be able to bring that Nissan home, despite something not right with it. He's currently running in third position, and it does give an opportunity for Steve Soper perhaps to make up some places. Although he is a little bit back, he has now moved up to fourth position because of the problems with the Mensley Ellis car.
And yeah, Steve Soper's last lap time was the quickest of everybody. Not the fastest lap of the race, but the quickest of everybody last time around. So he's closing the gap on Garrard. There is Garrard now on screen.
He seems to be back up to pace in this Nissan Skyline. So whatever was going on for Simon Garrard, I have no idea what it was, but he's back up to pace looking at his lap times, Alistair. So he may well be able to maintain the gap over Steve Soper, because Steve is actually quite a long way behind.
Yeah. Yeah, that won't stop Steve trying, of course.
No. I'm sure he'll give it a go. But he is something like, 20 seconds, 19 seconds behind. We've only got 9 minutes to go, and he would have to be taking out huge chunks. I think he is about 8 seconds on the last lap quicker. So whether he can really gain that gap, I don't know. We will wait to see. Further down the order, just keeping an eye out on some of the other categories. It's still Ben Klukas leading in the Tony Dron Trophy. And right down towards the tail of the field, we've got some other cars to keep an eye out on as well in the under 2 litre touring car category. I'll spot which ones of those are going well. Richard Dutton is currently in that class. I think the number 93 car, no, that's a separate class, isn't it? So yeah, just trying to identify who's leading in that under 2 litre class. We'll spot that in a moment. For now, we know who's leading outright very comfortably. It is the Dave Coyne, Mark Davis, Sierra Cosworth. And there we are, just watching that Simon Garrard Skyline. Whatever the problem was, it seems to have solved itself, or whether he's managed to solve it, I don't know. But the car is running much more cleanly now. Steve Dance, though, is in second place.
The leader of the under 2 litre touring cars is Richard Dutton, and he is just 1.5 seconds ahead of his good mate, Neil Brown. I've done it again, said one thing and thinking another. Neil Brown is leading under 2 litre touring cars, just ahead of his mate Richard Dutton, who isn't in the under 2 litre touring cars, but in a very similar car in the Escort.
Okay, so yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. So Neil Brown doing well, the engine builder man, who's brilliant job over the years of building very competitive engines across the board for all different types of motorsport. But this is our race leader. It is the white Sierra Cosworth, car number 60, which we can just about pick out from the gloom here at Silverstone. It is a rather damp morning, I'm afraid, and there is still a little bit of rain falling, very misty and murky, and trying to identify the cars through the rain is not proving to be the easiest task. But this car has a massive advantage. You sort of wonder how it came about, but it just has all come together for them. Steve Dance, though, doing that great job in the Capri that is running in second place. Quite a different era of car, and yet proving to be competitive, built to quite different standards in many ways. The Sierras had to be more like the road car of the time. The Capri could be really quite seriously modified, but there's still a big gap. And Simon Garrard, who's trying to close up on that Capri again, there isn't actually much difference in pace between them. And then we've got Steve Soper, as I said, trying to close his gap, but that is fairly big. It's 12 seconds, I think.
It was,
or has it come down from
he
that?
took 7 seconds last time around, and it's 10 seconds now.
Wow.
So I think we are on.
Actually, it's even less, isn't it? If you look at this timing on the screen, is even more up to date. So that's telling us it's coming down to 7 or 8 seconds at the moment. So yeah, there is still a chance, but we've only got 6 minutes to go in this series, in this race. So let's see how it works out. I'm glad to see, though, that most of them are still running glad that not too many have dropped out. We've seen a few problems in the pits from a few cars, but some of the more humble machinery is still charging around. Callum Lockie car is still out there despite having lost a lap. It's in the 11th position as we keep an eye on car number 70. Now this is the car that's leading in the Tony Dron Trophy, currently being driven by Ben Klukas, and he's been having a very, very good weekend. They've got the advantage in that category, and he's got a little bit of a gap actually to Tiff Needell, hasn't he, who is now second in that category, but the gap is about 17 seconds I believe, so that is quite a comfortable one. Another Capri coming through, that's the number 88 car of Richard Kent and Chris Ward. It's another broad speed Capri, a 3.4 litre engine, and that car is currently running in 5th place, so it's in a pretty strong position, but that's back. We've just had a quick glimpse back at the leader of the Tony Dron Trophy. Oh, big slide actually from Ben Klukas on that lap, being passed by a Capri that is very different, much more modified, a much quicker car. So Ben is not being beaten by a similar machine. It might both be Ford Capris, but they're very differently built.
Totally different, yes. And just looking a little bit further forward in the running order, Steve Soper, 3.5 seconds taken off the gap in Sector 1 alone.
Wow.
And that put him 5 seconds behind Simon Garrett, and that's for 3rd place overall. So we could well get Craig Davis and Steve Soper on the podium if he can keep this up for the last 4.25 minutes of the race.
Good stuff. Well, it isn't long to go as we see some more slipping and sliding. Tiff Needell has, I think, moved up into second in the other category, the Tony Dron category. Yeah, he is in second, but as I say, he is quite a long way back from the leader, Ben Klukas, but it's nice to see Tiff Needell out in the number 15 car. There he is. Another classic livery on that car, and Tiff's bright orange crash helmet with his name on the side, always easy to see. We're going to see a bit more drifting from Tiff here. It's being passed by one of the BMW M3s. I said we haven't seen much of the M3s, have we? Which has been a bit of a pity really, because they're such lovely cars, but one just flashing past as he went through there.
And just behind Tiff, that's the black and white young Camaro that's battling with him for position. So it's a very close finish for Tony Dron Trophy, and not for the lead, but for the minor placings on the podium. It's a very close battle as well.
Yeah, and actually the VW Scirocco is part of that too.
Yeah.
And they're all very close, aren't they? So that is something to just keep an eye on in the closing stages of this race. They're all still having a fun fight out there.
Soper has passed Garrett. Just saw that. It's actually just come up on your graphic, but we had that right in front of us. Steve Soper came through just ahead of the Nissan. So Soper man.
He's got up for another podium. We saw him on the podium yesterday, didn't we?
Yep.
I hope Ed Foster's got some good questions for Steve when he gets back onto the podium. He always loves to win, even a podium is never quite enough for him. It's all about winning for Steve, but nonetheless, he's done really, really well to move up into 3rd place. And Simon Garrard, who's in that Nissan Skyline, obviously had a problem earlier. It seems to be running okay now. This VW Scirocco is still running well, currently running in 3rd place in class, I believe, in the Tony Dron Trophy, but still chasing after the Needell car. Tiff Needell Capri. Here we are with our race leader. Time is ticking away, and we're getting much closer to the end of this race now. Seeing in 7th place currently, we have the number 18 car of Darren Fielding. That is one of the M3s, so actually that has moved up the order reasonably well, hasn't it? But it is headed by David Cuff, so actually David Cuff is the top of the M3s. He is in 6th position, so they've kept up a nice solid performance, because we've had a few retirements and a few problems from the Sierras, which is really like back in the day. Actually, I remember, back in the day in the 1980s watching touring cars, quite often there would be a mechanical problem on a Sierra or a mishap, but the BMWs, which had run in a different class originally, were always very reliable, and they're running solidly here today, 6th and 7th for the BMW M3s.
And we're looking here at Callum Lockie, who's been leading the leader of the race overall for quite a few laps now, and I think Dave Coyne would like to get through, but to be fair to Callum Lockie, he has no idea who that is behind him. His windows are all misted up, as we saw. He's in 11th position, so he's the leader coming up to lap him, but I think the lead is sufficient that Dave Coyne is not going to come under pressure from the second-placed car, but he would rather like to get past.
Ooh.
And a spin there for Neil Brown, who we know earlier on was leading the under 2 litre section of the race. Neil having a spin there coming into Brooklands, I think that was.
Yeah, that's dropping him down the order. Whether that's going to give the win in that class to someone else, we shall have to see. Under 30 seconds before the clock goes to 0, and then we will get the checkered flag out. That Dave Coyne still trying to get past Callum Lockie. The VW Scirocco in the picture there is now actually running second in class. Tiffany Dell has dropped down in the Tony Dron Trophy. I think Tiff's out of a podium position now. There have been a few changes there. It's still being led, that class, by Ben Klukas in the Capri that we were watching, the rather very standard Ford Capri. But the Tiffany Dell car has dropped back a little bit, and second in the class now is the VW Scirocco, and the Youngs have brought their car back up into third in class. That Chevy Camaro's back up into third in the Tony Dron Trophy.
So we're watching here Dave Coyne, who took over Mark Wright's car partway through the race at the pit stop, and leading the race now on the final lap, still being chased by Callum Lockie, who he did get past. Oh, Callum's gone very wide there. Just at the bottom of our shot, we saw him shooting off to the left-hand side. There's a big runoff area there, so he'll get back on, but he'll lose some time. There he is, just back on there, but a few seconds further back. Through into the final corner and across the line.
The win in the Historic Touring Car Challenge goes the way of Mark Wright and Dave Coyne. They've delivered an absolutely superb performance here today. A very, very comfortable victory for these two, and Mark Wright really delivered it in the earlier stint. Went for a long time before he made his pit stop and opened up a big lead. The second place is going to go to the Capri of Steve Dance, and that was well driven as well. He started in 7th place on the grid and ended up in 2nd place. Steve Soper has taken 3rd place. Those guys moved up very, very effectively from further back on the grid as well. And we're just waiting for them still to cross the line, so we'll just check that there haven't been any further changes to that order, because a lot of these guys were quite a long way behind the race winner there. The gap that had opened up really was immense, so we'll just wait to see them all across the line. Just confirmation, Dance has just crossed the line in that 2nd position, so well done to Steve Dance. Soper is definitely 3rd in the number 2 car, number 1 car he shared with Craig Davis, so that's another podium. And Simon Garrett in the Nissan Skyline finishes in 4th place.
Mark and David, what a fantastic long first stint. You made that look easy.
Well, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. Dave gave me a bit of old drive intuition at the start to say, look, Mark, just calm it down at the beginning. You know, just let the boys do what they have to do. So I listened to him, and yeah, we did what we normally do, and play the patient game. And the guys were doing a great race behind us, and it was just, I thought, right, a few laps in, and then let's start reeling them in, and that's what we did really, and gave Dave the car 20 seconds in the lead, weren't we? 25, so thought that'll do, and now Dave can finish off. Perfect.
Perfect is the word I'd use for it. Steve, despite the age difference of the cars, that Capri seems to be going beautifully in the wet.
The Capri, yeah, it was really good in the wet, but it's a bit lively, I've got to tell you.
A bit like you, Steve.
Yeah. But I'm made up with that result in them conditions. I was well pleased with that. It was really good. Really
Excellent drive. Craig, Steve, I know, Steve, you're never happy when you're not on the top step, but surely you guys have got to be quite pleased with that.
Yeah, I started to learn how to drive them again after a few laps and got a bit quicker. But yeah, no, we're happy. It's always better to be there, though, isn't it? You've got to aim to be there.
Well, a great drive by everyone. Well done.